Hi, I'm Doc, and this is Three Shots In. So, for some of you who know me, I sometimes also go by the name of the Crimson Sage. And I've started playing this game back at Rogue Trader, or First Edition. So, I've been at this for a while. However, I'd say I've only been really playing this game since 5th Edition. And, I want to talk today about the tournament scene here in Ontario and the general attitude about what makes a good tournament. And how we can make it an overall better experience for everybody involved. Now, I started attending tournaments back at War Masters here in Waterloo, and I've been going through dozens of tournaments around Ontario for the past 8 years or so. And these includes both the small ones and big ones. Also, back in the day, I actually was a tournament organizer, and I ran a series called the Tournaments of the Crimson Sage. Generally, these were small events, up to about 30 people, I think was the biggest I got up to, and I ran about a dozen or so of those. And I'm really happy to see now that the pandemic is getting a little bit better under control, that we're able to reconnect with the broader community and we're able to attend events again. And because this means we're getting a variety of games in and we're meeting new people, meeting some old friends, and we're getting to explore the greater competitive scene. So I'm very happy that tournaments are starting up again. In terms of the events that I've attended since everything's picked up, there's of course only been a couple because we've only had a few events that have been running. So I've been to small event in Guelph, and of course I was at this Stutter Snotling Major. And both of those were good events. It was great meeting people, both new players and some of those that I've known throughout the years. And yeah, it's been fun. Overall, though, I'd say the experience has been, it can be better. Not say that it was a bad experience, but I think that we could change some things to make the experience better for everyone. And I say experience because that's really what many of these events are for people. People take time off and they travel long distances. They spend hours and hours practicing, preparing their armies, putting together beautiful painted displays so that they can participate in the experience of a tournament. And the player base, like the people who actually come in, are solid. They've got great sportsmanship and a wonderful attitude, and they make for an interesting competition. I still really enjoyed every single game that I played in both of the events that I played in so far, and in events previously, because that's really been the connection. And they've been really good players, and I've enjoyed those games. But the overall experience of the event itself feels that it's too focused on the competitive aspect of the game. And that's great. It is a tournament. It is a competitive event. However, and you don't see this in some of the smaller events that are focused on like a fewer number of players, and there's usually going to be one or two who are going to dominate that particular event. But at these big events, everything seems to be focused on the top players who are there to compete and win. And you go to one of these events, and usually you have a pretty good idea about who's going to win, or at least who's going to be up in that top 10. For the 90% or so of the rest, though, they're probably not going to be up there. They're going to be in the mid or bottom tables, and they still want to have a good time too. So for those who are like mediocre or lesser players or casual players like me, oftentimes those big events leave out the experience for those players, and that's 90% of the number of the people who are going to be attending those events. So what needs to change then? What's really wrong? Because as I said, the players are great players in terms of like they're fun players together. They're not necessarily highly skilled. The actual organization of the competitive aspect is great. We know our rules. We know how to set up the scoring system. We know how to set up terrain. So for those who are there for competing and are going to be at those top tables, that's a great experience. For the rest of the players, those 90%, there are some things that I think can really be worked on to improve that experience. And it starts with even before the people come into the event itself, and it continues on after the event is over. And things they can start with, for starters, get some good player packs. Most of the player packs that are out there, they contain all of the information, but they're hard to understand. They are hard to find the information in. Sometimes the player packs themselves are difficult to find. Sure, they might be on a Google Drive, but you have to sometimes dig to find where that Google Drive is so you can find the article. And I'll take this from a professional standpoint because this is what I do every single day, and people pay me to do this. So my comment about the player packs should be taken with a certain professional lens. It needs to have easy registration. And we've gotten a lot better with that because of things like BCP. You need to have an easy way to register and pay and make sure that you know you're actually in there. And you need to have good communications. Some events do this better than others, but this includes making sure that you're in regular contact with your player base, that you make things easy to find in terms of what's going on with the event. Where do people go? Is there parking? Where can people stay if there's a long event? And that all comes down to just good communications to make that event a fun experience even before people show up to the event itself. And on the day of the event, it continues, of course, because you want to have people coming into the event and you want to have them greeted. Someone says, okay, welcome. This is supposed to be an experience. You go into a restaurant or any function, and there's going to be someone there who can welcome you, make sure that you've got all your information, that you know where you're supposed to go, you know who, if it's set up already, who your first opponent is, how to find the tables, what's going to be happening throughout the day, which is especially important if the player pack is not clear to use. And then you need to have somebody throughout the entire event who's actually there to provide guidance, to be the hosts of the event, to make sure that people have the information they need. And that doesn't always happen. During the event itself, now this is something that happened with some of the bigger events we've been to, where you finish a game and that's it. You got to find who your next player is and where the table is, and you rush off to the next one. You've got maybe 15 minutes between when your game ends and you go off to the next table. And it makes for a very rushed experience. One of the aspects of why many people travel to these is to have that social connection. And it's very hard to have a social connection if you're there, you're playing, and then you've got 15 minutes to get to your next table, you play, you got 15 minutes to get to your next table, and you're constantly moving. And it's exhausting, particularly when you've got 3 or 4 games during a day, to always just have these 15-minute breaks. And maybe only have half an hour to 40 minutes for lunch, which again, you have time to grab some food, which might not even be on site. You don't get a chance to connect with people. So there needs to be less rushing between games itself and an opportunity and a place for people to sit down, chat, talk about how their games were, and really have that social connection, because this is a social game. And finally, it's not just about the usual roster of winners who walk away with all the prizes. I go to an event and I'm happy that there are those who are winning. That's great. I know they're probably going to win. They're that top 10%. The rest of the 90%, they will politely clap, saying, good for you. I knew you were going to win. I didn't win all my games, but that's not what I'm there for. I have nothing to remember that by. So even if it's something as simple as giving away a tournament day so that someone got a bit of memorabilia, but everybody should walk away with something so that they remember what that experience was. And some of the best events I've actually had where everybody walks away with some sort of a prize, because that is about what the experience is. So obviously, not everything is bad. In fact, most of the events are really good events because they are well organized. They've got great tournament organization tool, things like the BCP for allowing for the easy pairing and the easy management, provided BCP works the way it's supposed to do. We've got good rules adjudication. We've got good time management between the ability to use chess clocks, and just managing the actual events during the day, when having to add a little bit of extra time or when you can move things up. And so those are the essentials for a competitive aspect of the game. And then, of course, there's the player base itself. The players themselves have a social contract of making an excellent culture of an experience that is pleasant while you're at the table and you're engaging with this other person playing this game, which really makes the game itself a fun part. And so we have this culture of good sportsmanship and, I say, the overall player social contract. So just like though there is a social contract between the different players, I think we need to work on having a similar agreement between the organizers and the players. Now, the broader community has agreed to attend and support these events. And that means we're going to have more events and we're going to have bigger events, and that's good overall for the gaming community. There's a lot of players, though, who won't attend these events because it's not the experience they're looking for, and for many of the reasons that I've just mentioned. So, if we want to continue to grow this environment, we need to start focusing on improving that experience. And that will welcome more people into the overall player base. We'll have more people attending events, not because they're going to win, but because they want to have that experience. And this works at both small and large events. Because, if you can't get it right at a small event, there's no way you're going to get it right at a big event. So I'm hoping that as we continue to see more RTTs or just generally small local games held at game stores, or even more casual events made by other groups, that we get that right, that we get those small events right, that we start thinking about what makes that great experience. And then we can have that carry over to some of the big events. So, where does all this lead? Now, of course, I'm also 3 shots in from Scotch Hammer, Crimson Sage. I am a former TO. So, we want to start following some of these principles within our own group. And so, I'm going to invite all of you, stay tuned. We have some ideas about some events that we're going to put our money where our mouth is and create events that are about the experience as well as the competitive aspect. We want to strike that balance between competitiveness and that great experience for everyone. So stay tuned for that. And I'm looking forward to sharing more over the coming weeks and, talking about the culture, about what makes great tournaments and great environment for playing games. This is Doc from 3 Shots In, and you can hear from me again soon.